Tonight, we have a magical bedtime story. One unlike any other in the wizarding world. A story tucked quietly between the lines of parchment, whispered between wand boxes, hidden in the dust behind Diagon Alley. This story isn't about Harry Potter. Or Hermione. Or Dumbledore. No. This one is about you. You, the one who was never quite sorted. Who slipped through the cracks when no one was looking. The one the sorting hat paused for, but never placed. The one who was almost forgotten. But magic never forgets. Tonight, you'll journey through forgotten shops and forbidden vaults. You'll walk the silent corridors beneath Gringotts, enter rooms Hogwarts doesn't show to just anyone, and finally, you'll hold a wand that knows your name. Even if you've forgotten it yourself. So lie back. Let the blankets pull you in like an invisibility cloak. Let your breathing slow with every whispered word. Because this story, this one belongs only to you. And the wand remembers. You don't remember how you found the letter. Only that it was there, resting on your pillow as if it had always belonged. There's no name. Not yours. Not anyone's. Just a swirl of shimmer ink that hums gently when you tilt it toward the window. You hold it for a long time, long enough for morning to shift into noon, then slip quietly into dusk. And only then do you open it. Inside, one line. The wand remembers. The parchment folds itself the moment you read it, crisp edges melting into curls. You blink, and it's gone. But the hum remains, soft behind your ears, like something breathing through the bricks. You follow it. Through rain-slicked alleyways and crooked lamplight. Past the parts of Diagon Alley no one maps. Past Ollivanders, even. Past the curve where the cobblestones forget their shape. You walk until your shoes whisper across dust instead of stone. Until you're quite certain you've stepped somewhere the ministry forgot. That's when you see it. A shop that doesn't sit, but leans. Half submerged in shadow. Its windows are clouded from the inside, glowing faintly like old candle wax. There's no sign. No bell. No trace of life but a soft flicker deep within. You reach for the doorknob. It opens before your fingers touch it. Inside, it's warmer than it should be. Not hot, no, not heat like fire. But warmth like memory. Familiar. Distant. Sad. The room is long, narrow, and lined with shelves, all filled with things that seem too old to still be alive. Wand cores suspended in glass, twisted branches that pulse faintly under cloth, feathers that drift though no wind stirs them. There's a smell, cedar, smoke, and something sweet like burned sugar. You're not sure why it makes your eyes sting. A man stands behind a counter, though you didn't hear him enter. He's tall. Very still. And his eyes don't blink. Not once. You're late, he says softly, as though afraid of the shelves. You open your mouth to speak, but nothing comes. The man tilts his head, not confused, not impatient, just listening. You don't remember. That's all right. He leans forward, and you notice his robes are stitched with constellations that shift as he moves. You've never had a wand, have you? You shake your head. But you've heard them. He gestures behind you. You turn. The wands are whispering. It's not speech, not exactly, just murmurs. Like leaves dragged across tile, like wind in hollow places. Each wand on its shelf hums faintly, some so softly you feel them more than hear them. One seems to click like a clock. Another thrums like a cello string. But none move. They're all waiting. You're not like the others, the Wandmaker says. You never were. Not quite muggle. Not quite wizard. Something slipped through the cracks, and you with it. You want to ask what that means. But the words stay curled in your throat. He doesn't seem to mind. You were supposed to come here years ago. Before Hogwarts. Before the sorting. He walks to a drawer and opens it with a sound like sighing. But the moment passed. And then your name disappeared. Your name. You realize, suddenly, that you can't recall it. Not clearly. You remember sounds. Maybe someone once called you something. A pet name. A nickname. But your true name? It slips away when you try to grab it. Like smoke. The Wandmaker places something on the counter. A feather. It's curled, not whole. Cracked down the spine, as if once burned and then frozen. It hums with a light that doesn't reach the edges of the room. You were meant for this. This core. This path. But something interfered. You don't ask what. Not yet. Instead, you take the feather. And for a moment, just a moment, you feel the weight of a memory. Not a thought, not a picture. A weight. Something pressing on your chest. A corridor lined with torches. A sorting hat hesitating. And then, nothing. The memory slips away, and the Wandmaker nods. You'll need wood. And something older. Something forgotten. You ask, finally, your voice hoarse as if unused for years, "What is this place?" He smiles. Not warmly. Not cruelly. Just knowingly. This is the place for those who were never quite found. And then the candlelight dims. The whispers fade. And you realize the shop has no doors anymore. No windows. No ceiling. Just shelves. Endless shelves. And the feeling that something important has only just begun. You cradle the feather as if it might break. Or wake. In the distance, you hear a one call your name. But you still don't know what it is. The feather never leaves your pocket now. You don't remember putting it there, but it's always with you. When you wake. When you walk. When you think of nothing at all. It shifts gently against your ribs like a heartbeat that isn't yours. You return to the shop every day, though you're never quite sure how. The streets change behind you. Cobblestones reappear where they weren't. Windows blink closed. Even the sun forgets which way to rise. But the door always finds you when you're ready, not when you want. The Wandmaker is waiting. He never moves. He never speaks unless you ask. He doesn't eat or drink, and he never blinks, not even once. But his presence wraps around the shells like a spell too old to name. Today, he speaks first. "It's time," he says, and your breath catches like a dropped coin. You need wood. But not from here. Not from the surface. He gestures toward the far wall, no door, no curtain, only a ripple in the wood grain that hadn't been there yesterday. You step through. It's darker than it should be. Damp. The air tastes of stone and moss and metal, and your boots crunch against old coins that never made it to vaults. You are beneath Gringotts. Far beneath. The tunnels curve like ribs. Some glow faintly with goblin-forged runes. Others are stitched shut with silver wire, humming with wards you dare not touch. You walk past vaults older than Hogwarts, past safes shaped like teeth, past statues that turn their heads when you don't look at them directly. And then, without warning, you're not alone. A figure stands in the path ahead. No footsteps. No greeting. They wear grey, and their faces covered in silk. Not hidden. Simply unfinished. Their hands move in slow shapes, not spell work, but something quieter, like words folded from silence. You don't understand. But your feet follow them anyway. The further you go, the less the world remembers itself. Your thoughts feel thinner. Your breath echoes oddly, like you're borrowing someone else's lungs. And still, the figure walks ahead, quiet as ash. Eventually, the tunnel widens. And that's when you see it. The grove. It shouldn't be possible. Trees don't grow this deep. And certainly not these trees, roots like cathedral columns, branches that shimmer with internal moonlight, bark so dark it drinks your gaze whole. But they're here. Growing from the ceiling. Their trunks curve downward like chandeliers made of life. Leaves the color of forgotten dreams sway in air that doesn't move. At the center stands the oldest tree of all, its branches tangled with bones, feathers, and strands of wand core material long extinct. The silent figure stops beside you. You look down. Where its shadow falls, flowers bloom in reverse, closing instead of opening. You step forward, slowly. The ground beneath you is soft, not with soil but with memory. With things laid to rest. You reach for the old tree, and as your fingers brush the bark, it exhales. A long, slow breath you feel in your ribs. It speaks, not in words, but in knowing. You were one of us. You don't know what that means, but the grief in the thought nearly brings you to your knees. You press your forehead to the trunk and feel your wandless years fall away. You remember the sorting hat again. Not the ceremony, but the hesitation. How it trembled when it touched you. How it whispered, "Oh, you're not finished, are you?" And then it refused. The tree trembles. A knot opens in the wood. Inside, a strand of something impossibly fine, gleaming with warmth and weight and memory. Not a unicorn hair. Not a phoenix feather. A memory. Your memory. You take it. And it knows you. For the first time, something in this world knows you completely. The wood closes behind it, as if sealing a secret that was only ever meant for you. When you turn around, the figure is gone. And the tunnel has changed. You walk back through corridors that now recognize your scent, your pace, your quiet. The statues no longer turn. The vault sigh as you pass, as though relieved. When you emerge into the open world again, you realize no time has passed at all. Your feather hums. Your memory core glows. And in your hand, you now carry a piece of the tree that remembered your name when no one else could. Back in the Wandmaker's shop, the lights are dimmer. Or perhaps your eyes have simply adjusted to a different kind of dark. You walk slower now. Each breath echoes. Your steps stir the dust like old letters being opened after too many years sealed. The Wandmaker waits, as always. He nods at the items in your hand, curled feather, still warm, and the memory core that pulses softly against your palm. "You're nearly whole," he says, and something about the way he speaks makes the shells lean in. But it still needs to choose you. You ask, "The wand?" He doesn't answer. Instead, he holds out a block of wood, cold to the touch, though not dead. You can feel it resisting. A stubborn hum. Like it knows something you don't, and doesn't want to tell. You press the core into its grain. Carefully. The Wandmaker watches, unmoving. The wood rejects it. Not loudly, not with a crack or a burst of sparks. But with silence. A silence that bites. The feather recoils, scorched at the tip. The memory strand dims. And your hand burns. You flinch. It leaves no mark, but you feel the echo of fire all the way to your shoulder. The wand does not want you. Or perhaps, it remembers something you don't. The Wandmaker says nothing. You sit in the corner of the shop as the walls whisper softly behind you. The shelves seem taller now. You can't tell if the world has grown larger or if you've simply grown smaller in its eyes. At some point, an hour, a minute, a year later, the Wandmaker speaks again. You need to see what was taken. You don't ask how. He's already handed you something, a shard of mirror, perfectly round. The edges are smooth as river stone. When you look into it, you see not your reflection, but a hallway. Stone walls. Floating candles. And a single door that shifts its shape as you watch. You blink. You're no longer in the shop. You're standing outside the room of requirement. The castle doesn't ask who you are. It remembers. You place your hand on the stone and close your eyes. You don't wish for a wand, or answers, or magic. You simply wish to remember. The door opens. Inside, you're sorting. But not the one you think you knew. You see yourself, young, wide-eyed, nervous. The sorting hat slides down onto your head and pauses. Then pauses longer. Its voice, warm and curious, echoes from the memory. Oh, now this is unusual. You feel the hesitation again. It's heavy. Nearly unbearable. You're not quite ready, the hat had whispered, uncertain. You're still deciding what you are. It asked you questions you couldn't understand. Who do you follow when you can't see the leader? What do you protect when the memory fades? What is loyalty when no house will claim you? It waited. But you never answered. And then the hat lifted itself away. No house. No feast. No colors or cheering. Just a forgotten corridor. And silence. You were sent back. Forgotten. Not expelled, erased. The memory stings. But then, something changes. The memory self, the younger you, turns to look at you. You meet their gaze, and they smile. You're not lost, they whisper. Just waiting. And the memory crumbles like sand. You are back in the shop. The mirror shard is gone. But something is different. The wood no longer hums with resistance. The core no longer curls away. You press them together, and this time, there's warmth. Not fire. Not pain. Something familiar. The Wandmaker steps forward. He doesn't speak. Just offers you the handle. You take it. The wand forms itself in your hand. Not all at once, but slowly. Like breath returning to lungs. It hums, not with power, but with recognition. It knows you. And you know, in the space between heartbeats, that it's been waiting as long as you have. As you turn it over in your hand, something flickers in your memory. A sound. A voice. A name. But it slips away again. The Wandmaker nods. It will return, in time. He walks to the shelves, and for the first time, he removes a wand. Dust drifts around it like mist. This was mine, he says softly. And then, without warning, he sets it down and vanishes behind the stacks. You're alone now. But not lost. The wand glows gently in your hand. The whispering shelves fall silent. And outside the door, the world has changed. You step into it. With your name still missing, but your magic at last, your own. The first time you raise the wand, it does not cast light. It casts stillness. The room, alive for so long with whispers, finally rests. The shelves cease their murmuring. The feathers stop their drifting. Even the Wandmaker's absence settles like dust into the corners. And the wand in your hand waits. It doesn't ask anything of you. Doesn't flash or spark or twitch in your palm. It simply is. That night, the stars seem closer. The clouds hang low, heavy with thoughts too old to fall. You drift through alleys like smoke, through shadows that part to let you pass. No one stops you. Most don't even see you. But one place does. The castle. Hogwarts. You return without announcement, without parchment, without proof. But the gate swings open before you knock. The lanterns flicker a little brighter when you pass. The portraits turn, confused, curious, but not afraid. You are not a ghost. You are not a student. You are not forgotten. You are returning. The great hall is silent in the early dawn, the sky above it pale with the suggestion of morning. You step across its stone floor barefoot, each footfall brushing dust from memories left untouched. The long tables stretch before you, the empty plates, candle stubs, the faint smell of pumpkin and old books. You pause at the sorting hat stall. It's not there. But you don't need it anymore. You climb the stairs to the 7th floor. The corridor stretches ahead, golden and still. Your wand vibrates faintly, a thread pulling you forward, not with urgency but with quiet recognition. You walk past the tapestry of trolls in ballet shoes. 3 times. back and forth. Not wishing, just remembering. A door appears. You enter. It's not like before. The room doesn't become a battlefield, or a forest, or a library. It doesn't try to teach you or test you. It becomes you. Stone and wood. Soft light. Feathers drifting from nowhere. Shelves of half-finished stories. A desk with one quill. A window that shows every season at once. And a mirror, not the mirror of Erist, but something simpler. Kinda. You look into it. This time, your reflection looks back. You don't flinch. Your hair is mussed. Your robes, wrong in some places, patched in others. Your eyes, tired, perhaps, but whole. And written across the mirror, slowly as ink finds parchment. Your name. You can't read it at first. The letters swim. But then, a flicker. A heartbeat. And there it is. Not a name you were given. The name you are. The wand hums. A spell casts itself without you speaking. Soft blue light wraps around your shoulders, not like armor, but like memory returned. You feel it all now. The missed feast. The vanished letters. The quiet birthday without an owl. The echo of magic you felt but could never name. And then, you forgive it. The world, yourself, the sorting hat, the school, the silence. All of it. The room begins to fade, gently. You leave behind nothing, because nothing is lost. Just remember differently. When you return to the halls of Hogwarts, the castle no longer tilts its gaze. It sees you. A portrait nods. A staircase pauses to let you pass. A suit of armor hums a note you recognize from a lullaby you didn't know you knew. You're not a student. You're not a professor. You're something else. A reminder. A keeper of the stories that fell between the shelves. A wand that was never snapped, only waiting to be held. You walk into the library, where Madame Pince doesn't raise an eyebrow. You find an empty page in the book of student names, tucked in the far back, behind an index that only appears for those who look. You write it. Your name. The ink does not fade. Not this time. And when you step outside again, you don't look back. The wand at your side is silent now. But you know it would speak, if you needed it to. Instead, the wind whispers for you. The ground hums where you walk. The world, both magical and not, has remembered something it once buried. You. And so, the wand rests. The whispering shells fall quiet. The dust settles in the spaces your footsteps once stirred. You come a long way. From a forgotten letter with no name, to a shop that doesn't always exist, to a wand that remembers everything, even the parts of you that the world tried to erase. You walk beneath Gringotts. You listen to trees that grow upside down. You met a version of yourself who had once been left behind, and you brought them home. Not to a house. Not to a common room. But to yourself. The magic didn't come from the wand. It came from remembering who you are. And now, the world is quieter. Not empty, just full of things finally at peace. The kind of silence you only hear when the spell has worked. When the name has been written. When the lights have dimmed, and the dream doesn't have to end, because it's already part of you. So sleep now, wand bearer. You are not lost. You are not forgotten. You are home. Oh, you're still awake, aren't you? That's all right. Some stories linger a little longer. And if you're still with me, then I suppose I can tell you one more. It happened not long after the wand found you. Or maybe it was long before. Time moves differently when you're between the lines of magic. There's a hallway inside H. Wand, it opens. Not outward. Not inward. It folds. Yes, like paper. And inside, you find something you didn't expect. Not a vault. Not a secret. But a library. Endless, silent, glowing faintly with candlelight that floats mid-air, unmoving. And there, stacked from floor to ceiling, are books. Each one with no title. You take one down. The cover hums beneath your fingers. And inside, it's your story. Not just this story. Not just the Wandmaker or the feather or the name. All of it. The first time you whispered Lumos and the world answered. The first time you thought about running, but stayed. The moment you realized magic doesn't always sparkle. Sometimes, it just knows. And there are more books. Hundreds. Thousands. Other stories, waiting for names. Waiting for readers. Waiting for someone like you to find them. You sit for a while. You read one. Just one. And when you close it, the candles dim, just slightly. You feel sleep brushing at your shoulders now. That gentle, floating kind. And maybe, just maybe, you'll dream of moonstone corridors and folded doors. Of soft voices. Of shells that breath. It begins with a book. Not a spell book. Not a diary. Not anything so easily named. It's just there. Resting on your bedside table one morning, though you live alone and lock your door. The cover is soft leather, pale as candle wax. No title. No author. No dust. You lift it gently. It breathes. Not audibly. But you feel it, the faint exhale of something long unopened. The pages are blank, but they're not empty. Each one shimmers faintly beneath the surface, as if words are hiding just beneath the paper, waiting for the right reader to look. You trace your finger across the first page. And your wand hums in its holster. There's no spell. No incantation. But something begins. That evening, you return to the room of requirement, though it doesn't feel quite the same anymore. It still opens for you. It still reshapes itself at your pace. But the walls feel warmer now, like it remembers your breath. Inside, the room is small. Just a desk. A chair. And a door. Not one you've seen before. It's narrow. Curved. Its hinges shimmer like starlight caught in iron. You don't open it right away. Instead, you place the book on the desk. The surface ripples beneath it, like the desk itself is reacting, recognizing. A single word appears on the first page. Echo. You whisper it aloud, without meaning to. The door creaks open. Not all the way. Just enough for candlelight to stretch across the floor. You step through. The air inside is colder than you expect. Not chilling, just ancient. As if it hasn't moved in a very, very long time. You're not in the room of requirement anymore. You're beneath it. Stone arches stretch overhead like ribs. Runes line the walls, softly glowing in dull copper tones, pulsing in time with something. A heartbeat? A spell? A memory? Ahead, shelves. Not stacked with books, but scrolls. Memories. Bottles filled with glowing ink. Portraits that have never been hung. Threads of spells knotted into cloth. All humming. All unfinished. You found it. The Echo Archive. You don't remember being told about this place. But your wand is warm in your hand. And something inside you says this isn't your first time here. You walk the aisle slowly. Each object here is waiting. A spell half-spoken. A love letter never sent. A potion ingredient that no longer exists. And then, on the far wall, you see it. A mirror. But not the mirror of Erist. No. This one doesn't show desire. It shows what was almost lost. You look into it. At first, nothing. Then, faintly, you see a version of yourself with no wand. No name. You see the version that almost remained forgotten. And beside them, behind them, something else. Not a person. Not quite. It's watching you now, from the edge of the glass. Its eyes shimmer with ink and reflection. And it speaks, not aloud, not in words, but in knowing. You took something back. Something the archive was keeping safe. The room pulses around you. Scrolls rattle. Bottles hum. Your wand tightens in your grip, as if bracing. The voice continues, softer now. If you keep remembering, others will too. The mirror fogs over. You're left alone in silence. But the book in your bag is warm now. And when you pull it out, the second page is no longer blank. It reads. Chapter 2 begins at midnight. Bring your wand. You return just before midnight. The room doesn't shift this time. It doesn't need to. The door is already there, tall and narrow, rimmed in silver, humming like a tuning fork just after it's been struck. You don't hesitate. You step through. The archive is darker tonight. Quieter. Not asleep, but something like it. The air feels heavier, like it's been holding its breath for too long. The shelves stretch taller now. Higher. And where the scrolls once floated gently in place, now they hover like icicles mid-fall, suspended by nothing but memory. You walk softly, your wand casting a dim, blue glow ahead. It flickers, not from fear, but anticipation. The space doesn't resist you. It watches. To your right, a basin carved from obsidian hums quietly. Its contents shift like water and smoke and thought, rising now and then into flickers of words in languages you've never heard. You reach toward it, and your fingertips stop just before the surface. The basin accepts your presence but offers nothing back. Not yet. Further down the aisle, the shelves narrow, crowding closer, curling in toward a small alcove you don't remember seeing before. Inside, a table, a chair, and an object wrapped in velvet the color of dried roses. You sit. You touch the cloth. It sighs against your skin. When you unfold it, what rests beneath is not a book or wand or scroll, but a key. Not metal. Not wood. Not bone. Something older. The key pulses in your palm, dim, golden, and warm. It feels like memory. Like something that used to belong to you, long before the Wandmaker, long before your name returned. As if this key was once part of your story, and chose to stay behind. There's no lock in sight. But the archive shifts. The shelves bend softly to the left, revealing a wall of drawers that weren't there moments before. Each one has a symbol, etched deep into the wood. Not numbers. Not letters. Shapes. Spirals. Crossed ones. A curled feather. A hand with 5 fingers and 5 eyes. You don't choose. The key does. It tugs your hand gently toward the third drawer from the bottom. You insert it. The drawer opens with a sound like paper sighing after a long sleep. Inside, a stone. Small. Uncut. Gray. You lift it carefully, and as it touches the air, you feel the archive tremble, not in anger or fear, but remembrance. Magic floods the walls like rain returning to dry roots. You see images, brief and half-formed, flickering in the corners of your sight, a young witch burning this very stone into her palm to protect her village, a wizard tearing it from the earth with a scream, a child swallowing it whole and vanishing into fog. The stone has history. And pain. And power. But most of all, it has been waiting. You set it on the table. The key vanishes. And then, the velvet cloth folds itself again, perfectly, and disappears into the dark. Something is guiding you now. Not a person. Not even a spell. Just the archive itself. It knows who you are. Not just your name, but the shape your story makes when it moves through the world. As you prepare to leave, the mirrors lining the far wall flare to life again. You see yourself, dozens of selves, each carrying something different. A wand. A lantern. A book. A heart. And one, furthest from the others, stands in complete darkness, holding nothing. It looks directly at you. Its mouth moves. You lean closer. No sound. Just breath. Just lips forming for slow, silent syllables. You are the key. Then the image vanishes. The shelves fall still. And somewhere in your bag, the book you found, the one that breathes, flutters open to the next page. Blank again. Waiting. The next time you return to the archive, it feels colder. Not unpleasant, just older. More distant. Like something has remembered its age. You descend the stairwell in silence, your wand flickering low and steady at your side. It doesn't need to shine as brightly anymore. The archive recognizes you now. It has stopped asking who you are. It's begun to ask why you've come. You pass the basin again, the obsidian pool that never reflects the same image twice. Tonight, it shows flickers of something you almost recognize, a classroom, but not from any house you've known. Chalk dust in candlelight. A bell that never rang. When you blink, it's gone. Tonight, you're drawn toward the far wall, a place you haven't yet explored. The shelves there are unlike the others. They don't hold books or scrolls or bottles. They hold echoes. Not memories. Not visions. Sounds. Suspended in the air, shaped like fog in frozen motion. A laugh from a century ago. A screen court in stasis. A lullaby still vibrating faintly, just out of tune. You reach out and your hand brushes one. A whisper enters your ear. Not all spells need wands. Only names. You freeze. The voice was your own. But not you now, you before. Before the Wandmaker. Before your name returned. It echoes again, softer, and then dissolves. You take a step back. The echo shelf hums gently behind you, now quiet, as if satisfied you've heard what it needed to say. Across the room, a door has opened. You don't remember hearing it. You don't remember seeing it. But it's open. Inside is a circle. Carved into the floor, chalk white and trembling with thin, silvery light. No rooms. No words. Just a shape, 3 spirals, wound inward toward a single point. There is nothing else in the room. No shelves. No scrolls. No guardians. Only silence. And the circle. You step toward it slowly, your wand still warm in your hand. But something urges you, gently, wordlessly, to set it down. You do. The moment your wand touches the ground, the light within the circle brightens. And then fades. You step inside. The world does not spin. The air does not shift. But something recognizes you. Not with language. With presence. With weight. Your breath grows slower. Deeper. You feel it, below your ribs, behind your teeth, beneath your skin, magic awakening where your wand does not reach. A spell forms. Not from your lips. From your memory. You don't speak it. You remember it. And as the spell flows from your chest outward, you understand, this is not magic as you were taught. This is older. This is the kind of magic that predates incantation. The kind you feel, not perform. The kind the archive keeps safe because it no longer fits into books. The circle accepts it. It glows again, not silver now, but blue, soft as candlelight on parchment. The air moves. And in the center of the circle, a new shape rises. A stone plinth. On it, a box. Wooden. Ash. No hinges. No seams. You lift the lid, which wasn't there a moment ago, and inside. Another key. But this one is different. It's shaped like a feather. Soft to the touch. Warm with waiting. You tuck it into your robe and look behind you. Your wand lies where you left it. But now, it's humming. Not like before. Not recognition. Respect. The archive doesn't blink. Doesn't shift. Doesn't sigh. But something in its silence says, you've passed. Whatever that means. You leave quietly, book pressed to your chest, feather-shaped key warm against your heart. Tomorrow, the archive will open again. And next time, it may not wait for you to enter. The next morning, you find the door before it finds you. You're not in the archive. You're not even in Hogwarts. You're in the forest just beyond the castle walls, where the mist rises early and the branches don't creak, they listen. You came here without meaning to. Maybe you were walking. Maybe you were dreaming. But when the trees parted and you saw the archway tucked between two oaks, you knew. The archive has grown. The doorway stands open. Not carved from stone this time, but framed by ivy and silence. You step through, and there's no floor beneath you, just the hum of the castle's deep heart, old and slow and vast. You descend without steps. The room you enter is not lit. It is luminous. Pale threads of silver web across the air. Shells float. Candles drift. And in the center of it all, suspended above a shallow pool of mirrored water, hangs a single scroll. It glows with breath. You move toward it slowly, your wand at your side, the feather-shaped key tucked into your robes. You know it belongs here. You know you do, too. When you reach the scroll, it unrolls. Not by spell or charm, but because you're ready. The words are not written in ink. They write themselves as you read. They are your story. Not the one you lived. The one you could have. It speaks of days you never had, spells you never cast, rooms you never entered. It shows you the version of yourself that never met the Wandmaker. The you that remained nameless. Wandless. Faded. You ache for them. But the scroll doesn't linger. The letters fade as soon as they're read, making space for new ones. You blink. Now it's writing again. But this time, not what wasn't. What could be. You see a room, a library with no walls, only shelves that move. You see your hand restoring old spells, preserving spells thought too dangerous to remember. You see yourself guiding others like you, unsorted, misnamed, nearly forgotten, but not lost. You see the archive, growing. Becoming. You close your eyes. The key presses warm against your chest. And the scroll curls shut. You know what it's asking. Not with words. Not with prophecy. Just a gentle knowing. You can leave. Let the archive rest. Let the door close and never return. Or you can stay. You can become its keeper. Not the master of it. The memory. You walk back across the pool, not looking at your reflection. You already know what it would show. A name reclaimed. A wand earned. A life halfway between story and silence. At the door, your wand hums once. Just once. As if to say, whatever you choose. I'm still yours. You turn back. You place the feather-shaped key on a stone pedestal that wasn't there before. The room sighs. And you step into it, not as a visitor, but as someone it now calls by name. The archive has many rooms. And they are always waiting. So if you're still awake, you might dream of one. A room that whispers. A room that breathes. A room that remembers you. And now the lights have dimmed. The echoes have stilled. The archive has gone quiet again. But it remembers. Just like your wand remembers. Just like the name you reclaimed in the Wandmaker's shop. Just like the castle that once forgot you and now softly bends to make space in its walls where you belong. You came to this story nameless. Wandless. Hidden between the scenes of spells, tucked in the corners of corridors no one else could find. The world had almost erased you. But you listened. You followed the hum of a feather. You walked beneath Gringotts and stood in the room of requirement, not to be sorted, but to remember. You did not ask for magic. You remembered it. And it remembered you. The Wandmaker knew. The archive waited. The mirrors, the scrolls, the silent doors, all of them opened because you no longer needed to knock. You belonged there. In the circle of the unnamed. In the spaces between shelves. In the story that kept writing itself for you. You passed through dream corridors, answered spells without wands, stepped into a library where sounds curled like ink, and stood before versions of yourself that never got the chance to speak. And you said, "I'm still here." And now, as the archive breathes its final page into the night, you are left with a choice, not loud, not urgent. Just quiet. Just yours. You may return to the waking world now, soft and steady, knowing that magic never left you. Or you may stay here a little longer, floating in the stillness between chapters. Because the archive never really closes. It only waits. For those who remember. Good night, Keeper. Your story is safe now. Oh, you're still awake, aren't you? You made it through the Wandmaker's whispering shelves, through the archive's shifting halls, and still, here you are, eyes open, breath slow, listening. If you're still here, drop a like, let me know you're with me. I see you. Because tonight, we go deeper. Not down, exactly. Inward. There's one last door. It's not in Diagon Alley. Not beneath Gringotts. Not even hidden behind a moving bookshelf in Hogwarts. No, this one is quieter. It exists only after midnight. Only for those who remember what it feels like to be forgotten. And behind that door is a story the archive doesn't want to keep. Every time someone writes it, the ink fades. Every time someone speaks it, the words vanish in the air like steam on glass. But tonight, the story is waiting again. And it's written in a hand that looks an awful lot like yours. So lie back. Let the candlelight flicker soft against your pillow. Let the magic hush. Because this is the one story the archive can't hold on to. And tonight we're going to try. Together. You slam the book shut. Again. The ink is gone. Not smudged. Not faded. Just gone. Clean as untouched parchment, as if nothing had ever been written there at all. You open it slowly. Page 43, blank. Page 42, blank. Page 41. One word remains. Try. It's written in your handwriting. You didn't write it. You sit back, heart slow but heavy. The archive is quiet tonight. But not peacefully so. It's the kind of quiet that comes after a deep breath, just before something starts. The room around you is the same as yesterday. Candles suspended in stillness. Runes sleeping across the walls. Your chair. Your desk. The book. And the quill you enchanted yourself. The tip glows faintly, not because of charm work, but because it wants to. The quill has memory now. It has written enough of the archive's silence to understand how fragile stories can be. You dip it again. No ink needed. You write the word remember. It lasts for seconds. Then it melts. Not vanishing, melting. As if the parchment is drinking it, swallowing memory before it can anchor itself to language. You don't speak. You listen. The room is breathing differently now. The book in front of you, it isn't resisting. It's responding. You stand slowly, keeping one hand on the cover. It's warm. Not fire warm, skin warm. like someone touched it just before you did. The archive doesn't shift. The walls don't move. But there's a feeling behind your ribs. Not fear. Not wonder. Recognition. You've seen this kind of magic before, when you first reclaimed your name. When your wand hummed without a spell. This is memory magic. The old kind. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. You try again. Once, there was a name that refused to be forgotten. You stop writing. Count the seconds. 1, 2, 3. The sentence stays. You exhale. But on the next page, without your hand moving, for words appear in silver ink. I tried to warn you. Your fingers freeze. The ink is not yours. The handwriting is not yours. But the voice behind the words is familiar, not someone you know. Someone you've been. You flip back. Page 43, still blank. Page 44 now shimmers faintly. The silver ink returns. This time, it writes. You should have let me fade. Your wand, tucked in its holster, vibrates. A low hum, almost inaudible, but constant. You are not alone in the archive tonight. You close the book, slowly, carefully. You press your palm to its cover. The hum stops. You rise. The air shifts behind you. You don't turn around, not right away. But you feel it. The room is watching you. No, not the room. Something inside it. Something that has been waiting since before your first chapter. The silence thickens. The quill dims. And your breath becomes the loudest thing in the room. The book writes one last thing, just before the page vanishes again into blankness. You lean in. 3 words. Bring the ink. Then everything fades. You are left holding the warm, blank book. And the realization that there is no ink. Not yet. You will have to find it. And this time, it won't come from a bottle. The archive has always been quiet. But tonight, it is still. Not peacefully so. Not like a room at rest. But the kind of stillness that only exists when something has entered the space and is holding its breath, waiting to be seen. You descend the spiral steps with the blank book pressed tight to your chest. It's heavier now, though the weight isn't physical. It's something else. Expectation. Tension. Recognition. The kind of weight that comes when a story begins to write itself, and you're no longer sure whether you're the author or the subject. When your feet touch the flagstone floor, the candles overhead do not flicker. They remain suspended, pale and unmoving. The shelves stretch out ahead of you, lined with unread thoughts and abandoned incantations, each one whispering faintly as you pass, too soft to be heard, but not to be felt. The magic in this part of the archive doesn't call for attention. It calls for witnesses. You walk until the shelves end. Until the walls curve inward. Until the light from your wand falls against something standing motionless at the far side of the chamber. A figure. It does not move. It does not speak. And though the archive knows your name now, etched into its ledgers, laid into its shelves, this figure does not say it. It doesn't say anything. It has no face. No cloak. No visible wand. But it feels familiar. You don't draw your wand. You don't ask a question. You simply wait. And after a long silence, the figure tilts its head slightly, not to greet you, but to study you. Then it turns. And as it steps away, you see that it leaves something behind. On the wall where it had been standing, you now see faint words written in soft, glimmering script. Not carved. Not burned. Just breathed into the stone. You move closer, and the letters sharpen. Do you know what it cost to be remembered? You reach out to touch the writing, and it vanishes before your fingers meet it. Your wand hums again. The figure is gone. But not fully. You begin to notice it now, in places it should not be. In the edge of a mirror. In the curve of a bookshelf. In the flicker of light between two rooms. Always nearby. Never whole. Back in your study chamber, the book now lies open on the desk. A single page has written itself while you were gone. This time, the handwriting is unmistakably yours. But the words are not. You read them aloud without meaning to, your voice low and steady in the candlelight. The story is starting to take things from me. You blink. And for a moment, you forget how you arrived here tonight. Not the path. Not the stairs. You forget why. You close the book with trembling hands. You speak your name aloud, softly, as if trying to anchor it again in your chest. The archive doesn't answer, but the candles begin to dim. You whisper your name again. This time it feels harder. Less certain. Like pulling thread from a tapestry that's begun to fray. You leave the study room and follow the halls deep into the oldest wing of the archive, the place where the original stories were kept, the ones not bound in books, but sealed in memory. You find a mirror covered in cloth. You remove it gently, hands shaking. Your reflection looks back at you. Familiar. Steady. But just behind your shoulder, you see it. The figure. It watches without eyes. And this time, it raises its hand, not in threat, but in offering. Its fingers are ink-stained. One by one, letters begin to appear across the glass between you. You are writing too loudly. Then, below it, the archive is beginning to forget others, to remember you. You step back. The candles flicker. And the cloth slides from your hand, curling like a shadow across the floor. You don't know what it means yet. But something is shifting. Not just in the archive. In you. The archive feels different now. Not larger, not darker, just aware. It isn't a library anymore. It's a presence. A thought stretched into rooms and shelves. And tonight, it thinks of you. You move through the corridors slowly, not because you're afraid, but because each step feels heavier than the last. The book remains tucked beneath your arm, though you haven't dared open it again. The words it speaks aren't entirely yours anymore. You can feel them trying to shape your thoughts before you've had them. And the figure, the one with no name, no face, the one leaving fingerprints of ink in every corner of the archive, it hasn't appeared again. But the silence it leaves behind echoes more loudly than footsteps. Deep in the West Wing, where the air smells older and time seems uncertain, you find it. A door. Narrow. Crooked. Slightly humming. It isn't hidden, and yet you know no one else would ever find it. You reach for the knob, but there isn't one. No handle. No keyhole. Just a single phrase carved into the wood, to open me, you must let something go. You whisper a spell. The door doesn't move. You press your palm to the surface. The wood is cool, indifferent. And then, behind your eyes, something begins to turn. A memory, not large, not loud, just small and warm. A corridor at dusk. A window full of rain. The first time you whispered a spell and it whispered back. You know what the door wants. Not blood. Not sacrifice. Just a name. A story. Something real. Something you won't get back. You sit in front of the door and open the book. The pages flicker as if caught in wind, though the air is still. You turn to a blank page and write one thing. Just one. A memory of someone you haven't thought about in years. Their voice. Their laughter. A small moment between spells. You write it down. You close the book. You don't look again. The memory is gone. You know it the moment the ink sinks beneath the page. It's not lost, it's just been returned. The door creaks softly, like it's exhaling. Then it opens. Inside is a chamber shaped like a bell. Empty. Except for a stone table, and resting atop it, a page. Torn at the edges. Ink barely clinging to parchment. But you know the handwriting. It's yours. Older. Forgotten. Before the Wandmaker. Before the archive. Before your name was returned. The text reads, "You erased yourself first." You stand very still. There is no echo in this room. No candles. No sound. Just the soft sound of a page crumbling as the ink fades once more. The door behind you remains open, but the archive is waiting. It wants to know if you're ready to stop being the keeper. If you're ready to be the story again. You do not answer aloud. But your hands begin to write. You wake in the archive. You don't remember falling asleep, or laying your head down, or when the candles dimmed, but you wake knowing something has changed. The book is open in front of you, not where you left it. The pages are moving, not turning, moving, shifting from one to the next on their own. Each line is familiar. You realize it's your voice. Not written, but heard. The pages are remembering the things you never said aloud. Each sentence curls softly along the parchment like breath across fogged glass. You try to stop reading, but the words are already there. You are walking through a corridor that didn't exist yesterday. You are holding a wand that remembers better than you do. You are becoming the memory. The archive is no longer a place you visit. It is a spell, and you are inside it. The book in front of you has no cover now, only endless white space. You press your hand to the next page and feel it respond. Your pulse, your breath, your presence. It begins to write in real time. As you think, the ink appears. You try to hold still. The book pauses. Then the candlelight flickers. A question begins to form across the center of the page, slowly, deliberately, letter by letter. Are you ready to be remembered as you truly are? Not a question with punctuation. Just a presence. A knowing. You sit with it. You breathe it in. And you begin to understand. This was never about a wand, or a name, or even the archive itself. This was about being seen. Being kept. Being carried. Your story will not be locked in a shelf, or sealed in glass, or whispered only to the wind. It will be written. Entirely. All of it. The soft parts. The fractured parts. The unfinished pieces that never made it to the sorting hat. You press your hand to the final page. Ink curls upward around your fingers, not writing, but binding. Not taking. Keeping. And just before the page darkens, you see the last line. You didn't forget. You chose to return. The book closes on its own. You stand. The archive does not shift or glow or sigh. It rests. At peace. You walk out without needing to look back. The doors will open if you ever need them. They always have. You are not the keeper now. You are the kept. A story no longer fading. A name no longer whispering. You are the ink that stayed. So, here we are. You've made it to the end. Not just of a single story, but of three. 3 journeys told softly across parchment and breath, whispered in the quiet spaces between spells, where names are remembered and forgotten and remembered again. Let's go back, just for a moment. It started with a letter. One with no name, no return address, only a shimmer in the ink and the hum of something older calling you toward a shop that didn't always exist. You walk the forgotten alley, past Ollivanders, past the parts of Diagon Alley the maps don't know, until you found it. The Wandmaker's door. You had no wand. No memory of being sorted. No house colors. No owl. No proof. But the magic remembered you. Inside that shadowed shop, lined with feathered cores and dust that moved like breath, you met the man who did not blink. He knew who you were before you remembered it yourself. You were one of the unsorted, the unwritten, a story erased before it was ever told. And in that shop, your story began to return. Piece by piece, you followed it. Through vaults beneath Gringotts, where upside-down trees whispered your name, where memories grew roots, and where a forgotten wand core waited for you to remember it. You built your wand not with spell work, but with memory. And in doing so, you stepped out of hiding and into belonging. The Silent Wandmaker was not your end. It was your beginning. And then came the archive. That living library beneath the room of requirement. Quiet. Watching. Full of spells never finished and names nearly lost. It called to you, not to test you, but to ask. Will you remember what others chose to forget? You walked its winding shelves. You discovered the mirror that showed you not your desires, but your echoes. Versions of yourself that might have been. You followed keys made of feathers and unlocked rooms that responded only to your breath. You learned magic that didn't need wands. Magic that lived in silence and sacrifice. The archive taught you how to be more than a name. It asked you to choose. And you stayed. You became the keeper. Not of books, but of memory. Of unspoken things. You walked between ink and echo, carried stories no one else could hold. The archive opened for you because you didn't try to command it. You listened. But the story didn't end there. No, you didn't fall asleep. You stayed. So the archive opened one final time. You didn't fall asleep. So the archive opened one last door. And behind it, there was no spellbook. No sorting hat. No flame-lit corridor. Just a blank page, waiting. You tried to write your story. But the ink wouldn't stay. Every memory you etched onto the page vanished as soon as it was spoken. Every word dissolved back into silence. And slowly, you began to understand, this story wasn't resisting you. It was testing you. Because some magic only becomes real when you fight to keep it. You met the figure without a name. A presence in the archive that left no sound, only echoes. Every time it appeared, more of your memories grew quiet. Not erased. Just distant. You remembered the cost of being remembered. You felt the archive bend, then blur, then hold you in place between page and dream. And when it asked you to sacrifice a memory, to give something up, to let it go forever, you didn't hesitate. You gave it freely. You gave it to the door with no handle. You chose to forget something real in order to pass through. That's how you found the truth. The archive didn't keep you. You kept it. With every name you reclaimed, every spell you remembered, every silence you dared to step into, you shaped the archive. You gave it form. You became more than a keeper. You became the ink that stayed. And now, the story is written. The feather found. The echo answered. The name remembered. And still, here you are. Awake. Listening. Carrying something you didn't have when we began. Not just a wand. Not just a memory. But a sense of belonging. You are part of the magic now. Not because someone gave it to you, but because you remembered where it was hiding. Inside you. So if you're still here, still listening, still awake after all this time, leave a like to let the archive know you're with us. Subscribe if you want to return. The door may be closed for now, but like all good stories, it will open again when it's needed most.